After enduring 20 years of a marriage akin to widowhood, I was unexpectedly given a second chance at life. I found myself reborn at the moment I was in the midst of divorcing Xiaoxing. The reason for our divorce was that he had secretly hired his ex-girlfriend, Jiang Mingyao, into our company and even promoted her to the position of financial director. This led to the most intense argument we had ever had. After he stormed out, I immediately went to the hospital and terminated my 3-month-old pregnancy. When I saw the calendar on the wall and realized I had returned to the year 1988, I left the bedroom with my head throbbing in pain. The living room was filled with a thick smell of tobacco. Xiaoxing was leaning back on the sofa, his legs casually resting on the coffee table, smoking one cigarette after another, the smoke swirling around his fingertips. Perhaps it was the hormonal sensitivities of pregnancy. Or maybe I was just fed up with the constant smell of smoke after so many years, but I suddenly started to vomit. Hearing the noise, Xiaoxing looked over at me, then slowly got up and came over, his face sharp and commanding, yet his cigarette never went out. After I was done vomiting bile, I rinsed my mouth and looked up to see my younger self in the mirror, momentarily disoriented. It was the hottest time of the year in Yangqing, and there was not a breath of wind on the balcony. Xiaoxing leaned against the railing, looking utterly carefree and lax. Looking at him, I took a deep breath and said calmly, "Xiaoxing, let's get a divorce. Tomorrow morning at 10, we'll go to the civil affairs office and get it done, so we can stop tormenting each other." Without giving him a chance to reply, I continued, "I know there's nothing between you and Jiang Mingyao, but I really don't want to waste any more of my life on meaningless arguments with you. It's simply not worth it." Seeing that Xiaoxing remained silent, I looked up at him and said slowly, "I'll have the pregnancy terminated this afternoon. Let's part on good terms. After the divorce, you can be with whoever you want, be it Jiang Mingyao or any young girl from your company." Hearing this, Xiaoxing finally reacted. He stared at me intensely, as if trying to discern something from my expression. After a moment, he flicked his cigarette ash, smirked disdainfully, and said, "Liang Ji, playing hard to get doesn't suit you." I didn't have the energy to argue with him. I simply said, "Oh," grabbed my peeling handbag, and headed for the door. Seeing that I was serious, Xiaoxing quickly grabbed my arm, his face darkening as he said, "Liang Ji, stop making a scene. You know very well that Jiang Mingyao and I are innocent. Do you realize how unappealing your current attitude is? My company is at a critical juncture, and I don't have time for these trivial games. Besides, you don't have a job or any savings, and yet you want to terminate my child. Who gave you such courage? Could it be?" He suddenly looked at me with suspicion. I freed myself from his grasp and slapped him, laughing without anger. "Xiaoxing, do you know what I hate most about you? Your presumptuousness and self-righteousness. In my previous life, Xiaoxing had told me countless times that he and Jiang Mingyao were innocent, but I had always treated his words as nothing more than a joke. I am well aware that they have always been ambiguously involved under the guise of friendship. There's the teasing from colleagues at the company, the coincidental sharing of a glass of red wine, and the accidental physical contact. Men seem to enjoy this kind of ambiguity, and Xiaoxing is no exception." I steadied my emotions, took a deep breath, and declared resolutely, "I must divorce him, and I no longer want this child either. As for the child in my womb, I admit my decision is cruel, but I truly cannot allow Xiaoxing to destroy me a second time. In my previous life, it took me nearly 10 years to realize that Xiaoxing had never loved me. His pursuit and marriage to me were merely acts of spite, driven by his bruised ego after Jiang Mingyao chose another man, the son of a factory leader, over him. Feeling humiliated and also wanting to spite Jiang Mingyao, he set his sights on me amidst the encouragement of his so-called friends. That year, 18-year-old Liang Ji was beautiful and confident, admired by many suitors, and recognized as the belle of the textile factory. She was the first girl in the factory to wear dresses and high-heeled shoes to work, and she sported large, wavy curls. I had often fantasized about my future, but all those dreams were shattered by Xiaoxing after we married, since I wasn't the woman he truly wanted to marry, and because there was never any love from the start. He never cared about my feelings. Back then, I didn't understand and would often hysterically throw things around to vent my frustrations, until I accidentally saw how he was with Jiang Mingyao. As soon as Jiang Mingyao divorced, he brought her into the company under the guise of friendship and secretly rented out the welfare apartment allocated to me and him to her. Though it was called renting, I never saw a penny. He was extremely considerate and cautious around her, making sure not to offend her in any way. Even when he was craving a cigarette, he would restrain himself if she was around. As his construction business grew larger and he became wealthier, he would take her to high-end venues and introduce her to his friends. His business partners were never aware of my existence. They only knew Jiang Mingyao as Xiaoxing's most capable assistant and his confidant. Even when I accidentally fell down the stairs and was reborn, he was still accompanying her at banquets, helping her expand her network and planning to invest in her business. In Xiaoxing's eyes, I was merely an accessory, the mother of his child, the woman who cooked for him at home, while Jiang Mingyao was the true companion he wanted by his side. his first love whom he truly wanted to marry. Whenever he faced me, Xiaoxing would always say, "You don't understand," his face often filled with disgust and impatience, and he would always storm out by slamming the door. "Do we really have to do this?" he asked, pinching the bridge of his nose with a look of impatience. "Liangji, you're already lucky enough. I provide for you well. You don't have to work, you don't have to socialize and drink like a subordinate. What more could you possibly want?" Because of the difficult pregnancy, I was physically weak and eventually had to quit my job at the textile factory, becoming a housewife as per Xiaoxing's suggestion, after the child was born. I was overwhelmed to the point of breaking down, my hair fell out in clumps, and I couldn't even get a good night's sleep. Yet, Xiaoxing saw all this as nothing out of the ordinary. In his eyes, I was just lying around at home every day, Xiaoxing would tell everyone. "I'm so busy outside, almost never touching the ground with my feet," while she enjoys a carefree life at home, living better than the gods themselves. While he belittled me, making me live in his shadow, he also admired Jiang Mingyao's capabilities in her career, showering her with praise. Pulling myself back to the present, I masked my emotions and nodded repeatedly. "Exactly. I'm not satisfied. So let's get the divorce proceedings started sooner rather than later, that way you can find a little woman who depends entirely on you." Seeing this, Xiaoxing thought I was jealous. A slight smirk appeared on his face, tinged with mockery. He loosened his collar, speaking indifferently. "Since you're set on this divorce, have it your way, just don't come to regret it later." After saying this, he made an excuse about having to attend to company matters and tried to leave. "Wait, before you go, sign the agreement." After reviewing the agreement, he looked at me incredulously, his gaze hardening. Then, his face turned ashen, and through gritted teeth he said, "Liangji, you're really something." I smiled, the feelings mutual. Seeing Xiaoxing hesitating to sign, I said with a half-smile, "What, can't bear to part with me? Ha, you think too highly of yourself." Xiaoxing has always been a staunch male chauvinist, especially towards me, never willing to give in even a little. His hesitation was never about me, but about the child in my womb. Provoked by my words, Xiaoxing impulsively signed the divorce agreement, not giving him a chance to change his mind. I carefully placed the agreement in my bag, then calmly reminded him, "Then, tomorrow at 10 in the morning, at the Civil Affairs office." Before I could finish, I was interrupted by the sound of the door slamming shut violently. That was the last sound of Xiaoxing storming out, evidently infuriated, despite multiple attempts at divorce. Elder family members' advice and the growing child in my womb always held us back from finalizing it. He must have believed that I wouldn't dare to terminate the pregnancy, thinking I was desperately in love with him, which emboldened him to act without restraint. After a simple lunch, I headed to the hospital. When I left the hospital, the child was no longer in my womb. In a past life, this child was very sensitive due to the unhappy marriage between me and Xiaoxing. Even the mere thought of divorce would frighten her, as Xiaoxing would threaten that I didn't want her. It was to prevent her from getting hurt again that I repeatedly yielded to Xiaoxing, stepping wrongly again and again. By the time I saw Xiaoxing clearly, my youth was gone, so I continued the struggle with Xiaoxing. Why should I step aside and let him be happy with Jiang Mingyao after achieving success? As long as I didn't divorce, I remained the legitimate Mrs. Xiao, without love. There was still money and a superior lifestyle, and my daughter would be the sole heir to his fortune. Now reborn, I've removed this weakness myself, hoping she can have a complete family in her next life, with parents who love her, not suffering a lifetime because of us. At a time when the national economy is booming with opportunities, it's time for me to cut my losses and become the fearless Liangji again. Perhaps not wanting to see me, Xiaoxing did not return all evening. The next day at the Civil Affairs office, I made a phone call. He had just woken up, still faintly hearing the giggling of a woman on the other end of the phone. It was Jiang Mingyao's voice. "Liangji, can you stop causing trouble? I was up all night and just signed a big contract. I'm really tired now." I took a deep breath and said sarcastically, "Tired? It seems to me like you're tired from being in bed, Xiaoxing, since we're getting a divorce. Can't you wait a bit longer? Must you disgust me like this?" Hearing this, the staff at the Civil Affairs Bureau exchanged glances, as if they had stumbled upon some juicy gossip. Xiaoxing on the other end of the line lost his patience, chuckled mockingly, and said through gritted teeth, "Liangji, aren't you just leveraging the baby in your belly to manipulate me? You think I won't divorce you because of the child, so you keep making a scene to feel important, right? Because of the child in your belly. I have given you enough respect, don't go too far." It's quite annoying. Xiaoxing was too arrogant, always assuming everything was his due, never reflecting on himself. Not wanting to continue the argument, I spoke the truth. "That's a pity because the child you're talking about was lost yesterday at 3 in the afternoon. As soon as I finished speaking, I heard Jiang Mingyao's pain scream, and after pushing her away, Xiaoxing was already on his way to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Half an hour later, Xiaoxing appeared. "Liangji, how could you?" Reeking of cigarettes and alcohol, his eyes bloodshot and his face ferocious. He was clearly furious to the extreme. I waved him off and took the opportunity to distance myself from him. I continued righteously, "Why shouldn't I? You have a mistress outside. And it's the same woman who had once abandoned you. Compared to your brainless self, I'm the lesser evil. I've told you it's not true. I promoted Jiang Mingyao because she's capable and meets my company's recruitment standards. Why must you imagine things?" Xiaoxing, calming down, pinched the bridge of his nose and looked helpless, making it seem as if I was making unreasonable fuss. Seeing that bystanders were about to intervene, I coldly said, "The company apartment benefits, the lipstick mark on your shirt, perfectly matching couples' outfits. Every single piece of evidence. Which one have I fabricated?" Xiaoxing was momentarily speechless but quickly regained his sharp tone, implying, "So, you aborted my child over these misunderstandings. Liang Ji, how could you be so cruel? As for Jiang Mingyao, I have nothing to say because she and I are innocent. You're just too sensitive and making a mountain out of a molehill." He made it sound so natural, as if all my pain and breakdown over this period were just me looking for trouble. But I knew better than anyone. Even if Xiaoxing wasn't cheating now, under Jiang Mingyao's deliberate approach, he had already shown tolerance towards her, almost welcoming her advances. After all, she was his unrequited first love from his youth. Jiang Mingyao's pitiful act only satisfied him more, making him feel powerful. "You're wronging me. You've already signed the divorce papers, so why should I still bear children for you? It's broad daylight. What kind of daydream are you having?" With the divorce papers brought out, Xiaoxing became the target of public criticism. "This is your own signature. Don't deny it. You set me up." Staring at the agreement, Xiaoxing looked as if he had just realized what happened, though she phrased it as a question. Her tone was decidedly affirmative. "No, I came to my senses just in time. Just because I'm carrying your child, do I deserve to suffer through pregnancy without respect, to be scorned by you as useless, incapable of anything? But don't forget, I was once a garment designer at the textile factory's drafting department, earning at least 100 a month with commissions, and I contributed half of your initial startup capital. It's because of you that I ended up like this. What are you going to compensate me with?" "So you blame me?" He frowned deeply, his gaze filled with incomprehension as he looked at me, watching Xiaoxing, who never seemed to realize his own faults. I suddenly felt very tired. After diverting my gaze, I handed over the divorce papers to the staff and then slowly said, "Am I not supposed to blame you? You clearly couldn't forget Jiang Mingyao, yet you still married me, despite my pregnancy sensitivities, my inability to eat, and my inexplicably low moods. You continued your entanglements with Jiang Mingyao, even going as far as to bring her into the company to vex me further. Don't you think you've gone too far, Xiaoxing? There's a limit to how much you can bully someone." Unable to hold back any longer, I bowed my head and started to cry. The suffocating feeling in my chest finally eased as I vented everything out. Seeing me cry, Xiaoxing was momentarily stunned. Just as he stepped forward, my retreating gestures stopped him, and he retracted his lifted foot. After a while, I hoarsely said, "Xiaoxing, just let me go. Do you know, your relentless behavior right now is truly disgusting." Xiaoxing has always been arrogant. With the conversation turning to this point, how could he cling on any longer? So he scoffed coldly, glaring at me fiercely, and said, "Fine, let's divorce right now. Whoever backs out is a coward." The procedures were processed quickly, and within minutes. As soon as he received the divorce certificate, Xiaoxing, with a gloomy face, turned and left. I walked out of the civil affairs office. Watching his departing back, I lowered my head and chuckled softly, then turned and walked in the opposite direction. After the divorce, I received 50,000 yuan, as well as the welfare apartment where Jiang Mingyao had lived, even though I was disgusted that she had lived there. The apartment was a much better deal than just receiving cash, after all. In a few years, the property prices in Yangqing would skyrocket, resulting in a huge profit. As the news of my divorce from Xiaoxing spread throughout the textile factory, Jiang Mingyao kept playing dumb and delayed moving out. I simply hired a few strong men to go to the residential compound to help her move out, which really meant throwing all her stuff out. "Stop. What are you doing?" Jiang Mingyao, dressed in a white blouse and a black pencil skirt, came back from work and saw her belongings scattered all over the ground outside, instantly going mad with rage. "Don't touch my things. This is breaking and entering. I'm calling the police to arrest you." She stood at the door, trying to block them, but they weren't about to listen to her and pushed her aside effortlessly. "Ma'am, please step aside. We're just doing our job. Look, the mistress has come back," as they were about to finish moving everything. I walked out of the room with my arms crossed and a composed demeanor. "I'm not a mistress. My relationship with him was completely innocent. Why are you accusing me like this?" Jiang Mingyao retorted loudly after hearing my call. She seemed to have received a great insult. Her eyes reddened with anger, and she looked on the verge of tears, unmoved. I rolled my eyes at her. "Give me a break. If you're not Xiaoxing's mistress, then why do you get to live here without paying a penny?" Hearing my words, the neighbors watching the drama started whispering among themselves. "So she really didn't pay, huh? That does say something about their relationship not being normal." the mistress has moved in, no wonder Liang Ji wants a divorce. Hey, stop talking, Xiaoxing is coming, an auntie hinted quietly with a nudge of her chin. As Xiaoxing approached, the surroundings instantly fell silent. He looked more haggard than I had seen him in days, his beard unshaven, and the smell of tobacco and alcohol emanating from him was overwhelming. Liang Ji, do you really need to rush things like this? Right off the bat, Xiaoxing spoke up for Jiang Mingyao. Of course, I need to. Just thinking about her living in my house makes me sick to my stomach. You, feeling insulted. Jiang Mingyao looked as if she wanted to fight me on the spot, but Xiaoxing held her back. He looked at me unwaveringly. Then after a moment, he slightly curled his lips and said with a light smile, all right, as you wish. After speaking, he turned to Jiang Mingyao, speaking gently, Mingyao, let me find you another place to live. I promise it'll be even better than here. While Xiaoxing was talking to Jiang Mingyao, his glances towards me felt like a challenge, not wanting any interaction with such a lunatic. I turned my face away, just in time to see Jiang Mingyao blushing shyly, seemingly triggered by some thought. Her face turned a soft pink, and she smiled sweetly. Then I'll trouble you, Xiaoxing, really, thank you. Without you, I don't know what I would have done. Just like that, in front of me, their conversation began to turn ambiguous. Having been through much in my past life, I no longer cared. I shuddered and scoffed. Disgusting. If you want to be intimate, go somewhere else and spare my eyes. Jiang Mingyao was swept away by my broom, and Xiaoxing followed closely behind her. Before leaving, his gaze at me was extraordinarily complex, and I could even sense his annoyance. After hearing about my divorce from Xiaoxing, my parents insisted I remarry him, or they would disown me, a threat no different from my previous life. Spats between husband and wife are inevitable. If everyone acted like you, aborting and divorcing at the drop of a hat, wouldn't that be chaos? You're just too hot-tempered. My mother lamented as she paced in front of me. I couldn't stand it any longer and spoke harshly. Mom, do you know Xiaoxing is still entangled with his ex? As soon as someone gets divorced, he eagerly moves in. He's already mistreated me so much. Why should I demean myself? That's not even confirmed yet. Xiaoxing said she just ran into some trouble and he was just lending a hand. Besides, you've been well taken care of at home during your pregnancy, not lacking anything. You've been living more happily than most, Liang Ji. Sometimes in life, it's best to turn a blind eye and not be too unforgiving, she sighed. Continuing, she said, your father and I are getting old. In the future, you can only rely on your children and Xiaoxing. But you just had to. Sighing deeply, Liang's mother wore a face full of worry, as if I were the one who had made a mistake. Liang's father, too, sat beside her with a sullen face, remaining silent. After a long while, he finally spoke. Marriage is no child's play. If there's a chance to reconcile, then do it. I think that young man still cares about you. He wouldn't have come to us and treated us with the respect due to in-laws otherwise. Seeing that they were both enchanted by Xiaoxing, I lost any desire to persuade them otherwise and said resolutely, it's impossible. I've already terminated the pregnancy. How can I possibly start over with him? Everyone knows, once water is spilled, it cannot be gathered up again. In my previous life, I lacked courage, always hesitating and too easily swayed, missing out on better opportunities. If in this life I were to tread the same path, sacrificing my happiness, then I truly deserve it. Ever since I got pregnant and quit my job, Xiaoxing began to look down on me, constantly comparing me to that other woman. He treated me like a possession, something to keep around for his convenience. Supporting me wasn't enough. He also had to take care of his ex, dreaming of keeping his home intact while playing around outside. He thought too highly of himself. I know that because of my divorce, the neighbors are all laughing at me. Don't worry, I'll be leaving Yangqing in a few days, and from then on, I'll only come back for the new year at most. That way, you won't have to see and be bothered by me. After the divorce, I thought of making my way in Jing City, which would not only distance me from Xiaoxing but also spare my parents and sister-in-law from any discomfort due to my situation. Besides, there's a distant aunt of the Liang family who had moved to Jing City, so I wouldn't be completely lost there. I bought a train ticket for tomorrow morning. I've already rented out the apartment I reclaimed, and I haven't told anyone the exact time of my departure. Living in the economically booming Yangqing, I went to a textile factory the day before leaving to wholesale some new clothing for street vending in Jing City, which is why I sought out Xiang, who had been my closest friend at the factory. Knowing I was leaving Yangqing, she was the only one who didn't try to dissuade me, just because Xiaoxing made some money from his business after our divorce. Everyone said I didn't know the good life I had and called me incapable of keeping my man's heart. It's good for you. You should live like this, Xiang said with a single sentence, giving me tremendous courage. Indeed, I used to be someone who dared to try anything. After finalizing our collaboration and having her help with collecting the rent, I went to a newly opened supermarket nearby, only to unexpectedly run into Xiaoxing. He was buying cigarettes, surrounded by a few sycophantic friends. Bro Xiao, you're not really going to marry Jiang Mingyao, are you? Everyone's been talking about you two behind your backs. Xiaoxing's hand paused with a cigarette pack at these words, and when he recovered, his expression turned sour. What nonsense are you all spouting? There's nothing between her and me. Noticing Xiaoxing's foul mood, Huang Mao hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Right, besides, she's divorced. She's not worthy of you. Huang Mao's words, however, struck a nerve with Xiaoxing. He lashed out with a kick to Huang Mao's leg and cursed. Who are you calling divorced? Who are you saying is divorced? Bro Xiao, don't get me wrong. I wasn't talking about you. Even after saying this, Xiaoxing was unforgiving. Huang Mao, realizing a possibility, cautiously ventured. So, brother, are you planning to remarry your ex-wife? Seeing that Xiaoxing did not object, his mouth fell open in shock. Once he recovered, he immediately said, actually, your ex-wife is really quite good. Pretty and good at managing a household. Remarrying her is indeed a good idea. I heard she hasn't found a job yet, and her family has been talking about her. Brother, you could take this chance when she's most vulnerable to pursue her again. However, before Xiaoxing could respond, the man in the floral shirt with a crew cut retorted, what's there to chase after? It's all spoiling them. You can tell you've never been married. You should know. Women shouldn't be spoiled. Once you start, they'll walk all over you. Xiaoxing lit a cigarette, nodded slightly in agreement, and said, indeed. With a cold smirk, he confidently declared, so, once she's suffered enough and can't take it anymore, she'll come back to me. I've got all the time in the world. I can wait. After paying, the group continued their conversation as they walked away. It wasn't until they were completely out of sight that I stepped out from the corner, my laughter tinged with irony. The next morning, I quietly headed to the train station with my luggage. After several days and nights on the train, I finally arrived in the capital city smoothly. A week later, with my grandmother's help, I rented a small house near her hutong and started my life as a street vendor. Although it was hard work, people in the capital city were not short of money. Clothing and small accessories from the south were very popular here, and I usually sold out in about half a month. Seeing that I had made back my initial investment and had started to profit, I called Xiang and asked her to send another batch of new styles by train. Over the phone, Xiang was happy to hear that the clothes were doing well in the capital city. After discussing business, she suddenly changed the subject cheerfully. Liang Ji, have you heard about Xiaoxing and Jiang Mingyao? Caught off guard by the mention of their names, I was stunned for a moment. During this busy time, I had almost stopped thinking about the past, including my previous life. After all, one must live in the present, especially with the chance to start over, rather than getting wrapped up in self-pity about the past. I lowered my eyes, disinterestedly asking, no, what happened? Seeing my question, Xiang, thrilled to share the gossip, excitedly said, after you left, Jiang Mingyao tried to climb up to be the real boss's wife and started seducing Xiaoxing aggressively, but for some reason, Xiaoxing was always lukewarm towards her. Recently, after she drugged him, he fired her outright. Because of the drugging, Xiaoxing ended up in the hospital, and Jiang Mingyao lost both her glossy job and her reputation. Now she's hiding at home, too ashamed to show her face. After a pause, Xiang reminded me, by the way, Xiaoxing's company is shifting its focus and planning to expand into the capital city. If you want to avoid any entanglements with him, you'd better be careful. Okay, Xiang, thank you. After hanging up, I sighed, feeling nothing but trouble ahead. Regarding Xiaoxing's sudden shift in business, I spared no malice in suspecting his motives. As he had always been highly purpose-driven, he must have learned about my whereabouts from my parents. But I don't understand why he just can't let me go. Could it be that he is no longer capable? The winters in Jing City are very cold. On the snow-covered streets, I started selling the currently popular down jackets and cotton coats. To avoid being lectured by relatives and friends, I decided not to return to Yangqing for the new year. Instead, I sent my parents 300 yuan for the festival expenses. On the first day of the new year, I didn't set up my stall. Instead, my aunt, who enjoys the bourgeois lifestyle, dressed me up nicely. I wore a light gray turtleneck sweater, a black coat, dark blue jeans, and a pair of short boots. My hair was simply tied up, revealing a small part of my pale neck. With light makeup on my face, I indeed looked elegant and intelligent. After replacing the earbuds on my ears with small pearl earrings, the old lady looked me over and said contentedly, money is endless. But you are at your most beautiful age. Don't waste what you have. If it were my choice, I'd dress up beautifully every day if I were still young, unlike you, dressed in casual sportswear every day, which is quite unappealing. That's true. You're always stylish, I replied, wrapping a scarf around my neck. The old lady's aesthetic sense was truly good. With her styling, I did look much brighter and more attractive. I ran into Xiaoxing outside a clothing store, perhaps influenced by the old lady's words. I ended up buying several outfits after browsing. Welcome to visit us again. As I was leaving the store with my bags, I bumped right into the cold-eyed Xiaoxing. Just one look from him could chill someone to the bone. The air turned biting, and suddenly it was quiet all around. Within seconds, he strode up to me and tightly grabbed my wrist, not letting go no matter how much I struggled. Xiaoxing looked me up and down, his face stern, and scoffed coldly, dressed up so flamboyantly. You must have someone in mind. Yet you still smile so brightly. Why do you frown when I appear, as if you despise me? Let go. His gaze was fierce, as if he wanted to tear me apart. Fearing that I might truly anger him, I stopped resisting and just stood there quietly, waiting for his reason to return. After a while, Xiaoxing's lost rationality seemed to return slightly. He held my head, looked into my eyes, and said hoarsely, Liangji, I regret it. I regret divorcing you. I don't care about the child anymore. If we remarry, you can decide whether to have children or not. It's all up to you. I'll even fully support you if you want to work. Hearing this from Xiaoxing was a miracle in itself. After all, in my previous life, I made some money from stocks and used it to buy a shop and open a tea store, which he thought was me being wild. Seeing that I still couldn't break free, I turned my head away slightly in disgust, suppressing the anger in my heart, and endured before saying, Xiaoxing, we are already divorced. We are now two unrelated individuals. You're not someone who can't accept defeat. You should move on. But I just regret it. Liangji, can we start over? His gaze shifted to me, his throat moved slightly, and he spoke with suppression. I know I had many faults before, but believe me, I never thought of betraying you. The thing with Jiang Mingyao, I was momentarily blinded by a ridiculous sense of vanity, thinking only to satisfy it. I had stopped liking her long ago. She's been fired now, and I assure you she won't bother you again. When I married you, it was out of affection, nothing else. For a moment, I was silent, then looked up at him with a chilling calm and said, regret is meaningless now, for I no longer love you. A marriage without love is just an empty shell, merely for show. Counting my past life, I have endured over 2 decades of a marriage akin to widowhood. I've truly had enough. Liang Ji, as a gentle male voice called out. I turned to see Jiang Yuan and his 4-year-old daughter Yaya standing at the corner of the store. Daddy, it's Auntie, the little girl, holding a stick of candied haw, was about to run towards me, but Jiang Yuan quickly stopped her. Seeing the father and daughter like this, a flash of malice crossed Xiaoxing's eyes, and his lips curled into a sneer. So there really is someone new. Liangji, you rejected me for such second-hand goods, willing to be a stepmother to someone else's child. How cheap, Xiaoxing blurted out impulsively. I took a deep breath, tilted my head back, and bluntly admitted, you're right, I'd rather be a stepmother and have children for another man than be with you or have your children. Under Xiaoxing's icy and sinister gaze, I smiled silently. My words and demeanor were like a dagger to the heart, striking precisely at Xiaoxing's most painful spot. Sensing his relaxation, I tightly pursed my lips, prying his fingers off my arm one by one. Then flung them away forcefully. On the way back, the atmosphere was somewhat awkward. After a moment, I explained, that was my ex-husband. His thinking is a bit, that's why I said those things to chase him off. Don't take it to heart. I tapped my head, somewhat embarrassed. I know. I didn't overthink it. Jiang Yuan replied with a gentle smile. Speaking of which, my acquaintance with Jiang Yuan began through his daughter. Only after getting to know him did I discover he was a university professor, one of the most promising young individuals in the area. His liking for books endowed him with the demeanor of a refined gentleman, full of scholarly charm, and he was also tall and handsome. If it hadn't been for his ex-wife insisting on a divorce to go abroad, their family of 3 would have been very happy. Lost in thought, I didn't notice the hesitant Jiang Yuan beside me until Yaya ran off to buy a popsicle. In the alley filled with children's laughter, Jiang Yuan suddenly stopped, turned to look at me, and started to speak. Liangji, about what you said just now. Before he could finish, I exclaimed, ah, it's snowing again. I stretched out my hand, letting the snowflakes fall into my palm, too beautiful to brush away. Do you know, it was only after coming here that I saw snow, a vast expanse of white. It's truly picturesque. Then, blinking, I smiled at him and said, by the way, I'm moving. I bought a shop with living quarters on Huan Street and plan to do business there. Besides visiting the elderly, I likely won't come here much. The little girl loves to play and eat. You should still keep an eye on her, especially since kidnappings are all too common these days. Jiang Yuan is such a clever person. He almost instantly understood everything when I spoke. After a while, he withdrew his gaze, turned his head to look at Yaya in front of him, and managed a slight smile, saying, then let me wish you prosperity in your business ahead of time. Thank you for your kind words. After finishing speaking, I walked over to the little girl, crouched down, and tucked a big red envelope into her pocket. After parting ways with them, I quickly walked into the courtyard where my grandmother lives and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Inside the house, my grandmother was lying on a rocking chair, listening to the radio. Hearing the noise, she turned her head, glanced at me, and asked with a smile, did you have fun today? Just now, Mrs. Lee came over and told me she saw you coming back with Jiang Yuan from next door. Are you too? Before the old lady could finish, I hastily explained. It's nothing like that. We just happened to meet on the road, and Yaya was with us too. Seeing my apprehensive demeanor, the old lady sighed and couldn't help but advise, actually, for someone like you who has been divorced and remarried, Jiang Yuan would be an excellent choice. Although he has a 4-year-old daughter, Yaya is well behaved and likes you very much, so you don't have to worry about potential difficulties in getting along. I've lived here for over 30 years and know the area well. John's parents are reasonable, and Jiang Yuan himself is a good man. You're a woman, after all. There's no need to be overly assertive, you might consider it. Knowing the old lady meant well, since most people's thinking was still quite limited compared to 20 years later, and the little girl was indeed well behaved. I still didn't want to become her stepmother. It was hard to speak harshly to the old lady, as she truly had my best interests at heart. As she said, Jiang Yuan and his family were indeed good people, but I wanted to live my life freely and without restraint, which meant no connection with him, so I sat down, took her arm, and spoke frankly. Being with Jiang Yuan, no matter how good he and his family are, would mean compromising myself. Hearing this, the old woman was momentarily puzzled. I decided to be even more direct, hypothetically stating, if I were to marry Jiang Yuan, no matter how much Yaya liked me, he would have to balance my relationship with her. There will always be friction and disputes, and I don't think I can compete with a child. Besides, I am quite selfish and lack a spirit of sacrifice, especially when it comes to being a stepmother, which I'm not interested in. Educating a child is hard enough, even more so when they're not your own. And about Yaya's biological mother, she's just abroad, if she ever returns. No one knows how Jiang Yuan and Yaya would treat her. If they can't let go of her, what would my place be then? I'm really wary of dealing with first loves and ex-wives. Seeing the old lady about to persuade further, I earnestly said, remarrying has always been a complicated issue. Marrying a strong man feels like being consumed, and marrying a weaker one feels like a loss. Grandma, I'm a businesswoman and good at calculating costs, so I've never considered remarrying. Marriage is not the only path for a woman. I don't need to prove my worth through marriage anymore. I have money, property, and intelligence, and I certainly don't lack love. Finally, the old lady gave up trying to persuade me. She could see that I was living a fulfilled and happy life, and the mundane concerns of daily life no longer suited me. After opening up, I began to expand my business horizon, venturing into the fashion industry for real, without just dabbling in minor deals. As my business flourished, Xiaoxing resurfaced and began to harass me persistently. Despite his efforts, I never showed him any warmth. Whether he feigned drunkenness to whisper sweet nothings or resorted to self-suffering tricks, I treated him as nothing but a clown. After all, the hurt he had once caused me was very real. Even though the wounds had healed, the scars remained. I was never a fan of mending broken relationships. I preferred the turning of the tables, even to a destructive extent. Why should a mere apology from him, eyes red, compel me to forgive him as if nothing had happened? Seeing my increasingly cold glances, Xiaoxing stopped pressing me and switched to a more conciliatory approach. After earning enough money to ensure a comfortable life, I moved to actively diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer. As Xiaoxing lay on his deathbed barely clinging to life, his family couldn't help but call me, but I never answered, even after the doctors declared him dead. As I said before, I truly never forgave him in his lifetime. In a separate event from the past, upon hearing the news of Liang Ji falling down the stairs and dying instantly, Xiaoxing and Xiaoani hurried back home. In the dimly lit room, as soon as Xiaoani entered, she saw Xiaoxing clutching their mother's corpse, losing his mind. Liang Ji, stop pretending now. Isn't this what you wanted? For me to come back? Now that I'm here, how much longer will you keep this up? If you hadn't been so stubborn, growing more and more indifferent towards me, and always acting like nothing mattered, why would I have thought to provoke you with Jiang Mengyao? Unable to stand Xiaoxing disrespecting their mother any longer, an infuriated Xiaoani pushed him away, protectively covering Liang Ji's body to prevent him from touching her. She spoke with disdain. My mother is dead. Who are you trying to impress with this act of passion? Just like Mom said, you really are despicable. Remembering everything that had happened, tears welled up in Xiaoani's eyes as she choked up. All she ever wanted while she was alive was a bit of respect from you, her husband. But what were you doing? You were busy being intimate with your close female friend. Don't say it was unintentional, because you genuinely hurt her. If it hadn't been for me, worried that you and that woman would mistreat me, she would have left this place long ago to live a life without you. Her voice was filled with sorrow. Determined not to let Xiaoxing off easily, she pulled off the jade bead bracelet from Liang Ji's wrist and pointed to an old but gruesome scar. This is what she did to herself after I was born, during a bout of postpartum depression and nervous breakdown. What were you doing then? You were busy complaining about her being unreasonable and not presentable. She clearly told you she was feeling unwell, but you never took it to heart. All of you just bullied her. Xiaoani broke down screaming. She knew she had lost the mother who loved her the most. I didn't know. He stuttered, unable to form a coherent response. Xiaoani frantically wiped her tears, but they only fell faster. Whenever Xiaoxing tried to come closer, she kicked and bit fiercely. Xiaoxing could barely contain his anger, wishing he could kill to vent his frustration. After Liang Ji's burial, Xiaoxing began to drown his sorrows in alcohol. 3 years later, weakened by his circumstances, he was sidelined by his daughter, Xiaoani, who took full control of the company's affairs. Since Xiaoxing's only child was Xiaoani, the company's board dared not object, even if they were dissatisfied. They had to suppress their grievances. Having bided her time over the years, Xiaoani did not disappoint when she took over. She immediately began to overhaul the company. First by terminating the collaboration with Jiang Mingyao's company, then by withdrawing funds and citing severe excessive formaldehyde in the decorating materials to permanently cease cooperation. Being a decorating company less than a year old, it couldn't withstand such pressure from Xiaoani. Soon, the company faced various internal issues. Without Xiaoxing's backing and with clients afraid to engage their services, salaries went unpaid, staff protested, and Jiang Mingyao was in a state of constant panic. Left with no choice, Jiang Mingyao desperately sought Xiaoxing's help. Upon learning this, Xiaoani kicked open the door and slapped Jiang Mingyao across the face. I am now the one steering the Xiao Corporation. Aren't you always touting yourself as a clear-headed, independent woman? What now? Can't stay strong without a man? Xiaoani unleashed a torrent of sarcasm. Before Jiang Mingyao could defend herself, Xiaoani pointed at Xiaoxing and said, "Unfortunately, he's just a powerless old man now. If you really want to marry him, go ahead. After all, I've successfully taken over the company, and thanks to my mother's long-term care, he's no longer capable of having children. Having someone to care for him wholeheartedly without costing a penny, I, as his daughter, would be only too pleased." Her words left others in shock and brought wry smiles. "He never believed in me from the start," Xiaoxing said bitterly, suddenly realizing that his life had become a joke over the years. "Trust you? I'd sooner believe a sow could climb a tree," Xiaoani sneered. Greatly influenced by Liang Ji, Xiaoani chose to remain unmarried, opting instead to select quality sperm from a sperm bank for childbirth. Thus, both lived their lives in separate realities, each believing themselves to be truly happy. Xiaoxing was confined by Xiaoani to the villa where Liang Ji had lived. He was free to move around, but forbidden from entering Liang Ji's room. According to Xiaoani, he was unworthy. Moreover, she consistently ignored his request to be buried together with Liang Ji in his later years. "You've disgusted my mother all her life. How could I possibly let you haunt her in the next life and soil her cycle of reincarnation?" Xiaoxing left this world full of regrets. After an indeterminate amount of time, he opened his eyes to find himself young again. Unable to discern whether it was a dream or reality, he only knew Liang Ji was still alive, vibrant, and even more captivating than when he first met her. Due to some discrepancies, they were divorced, his daughter was gone, and their relationship had cooled to an icy low. Xiaoxing thought, as long as he was sincere and treated her well, she would eventually forgive him. But even when he was diagnosed with lung cancer, suffering terribly from chemotherapy, she showed no signs of softening. Only then did he fully understand that Liang Ji truly despised him.